There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is me, Soul, here for another episode of the Soul Sessions featured here on Wrestling Republic. My guest with me today, he is the man of the hour. It is Cosmo Orion. How are you doing, my friend?
Good. I'm doing very good. How are you?
I'm very well. So, Cosmo, for people who are not familiar with yourself, who are you? How did you get into the wrestling business in the first place?
So I'm an independent professional wrestler out of El Paso, Texas. I've been wrestling for about a year now, and I got into wrestling when I was like really young. I watched, I think it was an episode of SmackDown, and I saw Rey Mysterio like springboarding all over the place,
Oh,
and I fell in love almost immediately, and I've been a fan ever since. And I didn't start training until 2017.
mhm.
But I was still in high school at the time, so I had to quit training to finish high school, and I got back into it in 2021.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, I've seen, that you've listed off some of your favorite wrestlers, AJ Styles, Grand Metalik, Naito, Ibushi. What's about those kind of guys that really inspired you to adopt that kind of high fly style?
There's something about how innovative they were inside the wrestling ring. One of the things I really like about wrestling is how creative people can get when they like when hurting other people. I really like that. And so I saw AJ Styles, especially Marufuji, who would do these things that I'd never even thought of in terms of hurting people or in terms of like inside a wrestling match. And that made it super, super interesting for me. And so guys like Naito, guys like Ibushi, Máscara Dorada, who were not only were they innovative, but they were good and they were fast too.
Mhm.
So all of that, when you combine it all together, it just captivated me.
No, it's always great to see. Especially mentioned a lot of Japanese style wrestling. I've seen that that's really a big fan. I've seen like you've posted about some of the greats over there. Jushin Thunder Liger and everything like that.
Yep.
What's it about Japanese style that definitely speaks to you? Because there's definitely is a conflict between styles in America and Mexico as well as styles of Japan.
I think it's just how different everything is. When you look at pro wrestling in the
Mhm.
West and you compare it to pro wrestling in the East, it's very different, but on a very small level. It's like the details are very different, but it's a different but good way of telling the same story, and that's why I liked it a lot. And specifically when guys like Jushin Liger, like the Great Sasuke, it's the fact that they were junior heavyweights. And
Mhm.
I like to model my career, my wrestling style around wrestlers that share my like frame, my body type. So guys like AJ Styles, Jushin Liger, they're about the same height as me, the same weight as me, and seeing what they can do inspires me to do what they can do and then even more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. During times when you were training as well, did you see sometimes that people who maybe like a certain style, but maybe their limitations, even by their body or just their skill set, really didn't
Mhm.
mix with the kind of style they were going to go for? Is that something you've
Yeah.
seen?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot. We've had guys come in that are just a lot heavier, that are a lot
Mhm.
taller, that they like to do like more flashy submission style stuff. For example, there was a guy that we had who was a big fan of Bret Hart, and he'd
Mhm.
love to do all the Bret Hart technical stuff, fast submissions, but the way he was built, it lended him more towards a strongman type wrestler, right? Someone like Scott Hall or Kevin Nash. So they had to model their wrestling style after them, they'd love to do it after Bret Hart, you know? It's
Yeah,
just a
no.
matter of how you're built and what's easier for you inside that ring.
No, of course, absolutely as well. Going back to Japan as well, if someone was, never really seen much of Japan and then maybe they've more focused on, West style wrestling, what's something you would recommend for them to go out of their way to see and really get into that kind of style?
I'd recommend New Japan Pro Wrestling, especially after the Forbidden Door that just came out, it just happened.
Mm.
I think it's a great starting point for a lot of new fans because you get to see not just great Japanese wrestlers, but great I get Western wrestlers that have adopted to the Japanese style. Guys like Jay White, guys like Will Ospreay, Robbie Eagles. And so then from New Japan Pro Wrestling, if you do like that style, you can start branching out. I recommend Noah. I love Noah so much.
Mm.
DDT, and then you can start going into like Stardom or Tokyo Joshi. You can just start falling down that rabbit hole of Japanese pro wrestling.
Ah, of course, absolutely. Speaking of Noah, you must have been a fan of Wrestle Kingdom when how they had the crossover with Noah going on there. Was that a
He,
big fan of yours?
I did not think they were gonna do it. Honestly, I thought that was just like a dream scenario until they announced it. I'm telling you, man, I stayed up all night just to watch
Oh,
that dream card. It was so
yeah,
good.
dedication, right? I tell you what, that is dedication and a half.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
speaking about you, you are, the wrestling legacy world champion, and you were fought in that inaugural match to become the champion. How did you feel, going into that match and then end up walking away with gold around your waist?
So going into that match, there was a lot of significance towards it because
Mhm,
Marty and I had wrestled 3 times already, and our record stood at 1-1-1. And so this was not only the match to crown a new champion, but it was also the rubber match in our series. And going into it, I felt a lot of weight on my shoulders to make sure that it was the best match that I could possibly give out because it had so much riding on it. And the match that did happen at Big Bang earlier this year,
mhm,
in my opinion, it's probably the match I'm most proud of. And a lot of people are saying it's Pro Wrestling Legacy's like match of the year. So we
mhm.
set the standard very high in the beginning of the year, and I'm so proud of it. Walking out with the championship, it's a high honor to be the first champion of any promotion, let alone the first world champion. And I'm just really thankful that they're giving me this opportunity to run with the ball, and the fact that they have so much faith in me to be like the face of the company. It's a high honor, and hopefully, I'm not letting them down. But yeah,
No, I've seen your style, just clips on Instagram, and you're definitely not letting them down. You're going to be a bright star for that promotion, I can tell you. And
thank you.
for our people who are not familiar with Pro Wrestling Legacy, what is Pro Wrestling Legacy?
So, Pro Wrestling Legacy is an independent pro wrestling promotion within El Paso, Texas. And the our goal when we first started is that we wanted to introduce or at least bring in American style pro wrestling to El Paso. Because for
Hmm.
the last, I think, 10 years, it was just lucha libre. Everywhere
Okay.
you'd go, every promotion on the indies, it was just lucha libre, and you weren't seeing a whole lot of pro wrestling. And a lot of the guys who are there now and who started with Legacy, that's what we wanted to bring in. Wanted to bring in more American style professional wrestling. And in my opinion, it's been a great benefit because Pro Wrestling Legacy offers something completely unique from everybody else, something truly special. And I think that's why we're slowly climbing to the top of the El Paso scene right now.
Oh, good to hear. Good to hear on that. Was there a lot of like fear? Because obviously you said like the usual lucha libre style that there, and you were bringing in American style. Was a lot of like hesitation, like, well, we're going to change like the standard around here a bit.
I wouldn't say it was fear, but it was a lot harder to start getting the ball rolling
Mm,
because as much as we wanted to bring in pro wrestlers, especially wrestlers from out of town, being like a small startup indie promotion, we just didn't have the financial means to do so. So we had to rely a lot on the local luchadors.
mhm,
And then that was kind of counterintuitive to what we were trying to do and bringing in American pro wrestling, but with the like largely Mexican or luchador roster, it didn't really gel well. So luckily, the guys that we started with, they were training under pro wrestling, like American pro wrestling style,
mhm.
and like you see, like, I think they call it like the pillars of pro wrestling legacy. It's me, Marty Snow, Jimo, Norinco. We all studied or we were all trained under pro wrestling, American style wrestling, and we were, I guess, the forefront of bringing that American style to El Paso.
Oh, good to hear. Good to hear. Moving away from PWL, you worked a show that someone you idolized, Grand Metalik was on. I was just wondering what was your
Yes.
thoughts about working a show with someone you idolize on.
It was a lot different than I was expecting because as a wrestler myself, I like to
Mhm.
keep things very professional in the locker room. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with like asking for a picture like backstage because I did that with Matt Cardona, I'm not gonna lie. And it just depends on who they are as a person because I saw Metalik and I saw that they were very private, they were very kind of secluded and distant from everybody else. And I thought, well, like I kind of don't want to like make things awkward in the locker room, especially seeing as I'm one of the local guys, I'm one of the smaller guys on the roster. I don't want to belittle myself in that way. So
Mhm.
I just kind of let him do his thing, let him stay in this side of the locker room. But watching him work was a real treat. It was very surreal, I want to say, to share a locker room with one of my idols and then seeing him live in like 5 minutes right afterwards. It was great.
Must have been an absolute dream
That was
situation for
crazy.
yourself to be in, man. You spoke about meeting Matt Cardona. What was that like?
So Matt Cardona and I were on a Lucha Libre show in Las Vegas. We were both on the same show, and we didn't really get to meet because Matt Cardona, as you can imagine, he has such an insane like travel schedule. So he had to go in, wrestle his match, and then immediately leave to catch a flight.
Damn.
And in between everything, like the transitions, like as he was coming back from his match, I was like, I gotta do it. I gotta do it before he leaves, or otherwise I'm just gonna kick myself in the foot for the rest of the trip. So I just asked for a quick selfie. He said, yeah, super cool, super laid back. We took the picture, and then he left, like in a blink of an eye right after it. It was great.
Damn. I am glad to hear, man. Let's go about the rest of the year because you posted a wee list on your Instagram, the 2022 list. I was going
Mhm.
through it, and there was one there, PWI 500. What does it mean?
Yes.
What would it mean to you to get on the PWI 500?
To get on the PWI 500, in my opinion, it's this form of validation
Mm-hmm.
because up until like very recently, I haven't felt like a legitimate indie wrestler just because I've stayed within my hometown for a long time. Just until recently, I started traveling, but I haven't really been getting like bookings outside of my own hometown. So to get on the PWI 500, it's validating for me, and it makes me feel like I really am a pro wrestler and I'm in it for the long run,
Mm-hmm.
as well as if I can get on the PWI 500 within my rookie year, then it'd be a testament just to how much I've worked and how much I've improved since my debut last May. So that's why I'm really shooting for getting on the 500. Even if I'm like number 500, if I'm on that list, it'd mean the world.
I hope you get on the list, man. I hope you get on the list. You mentioned about traveling as well. Is that what the part uncharted territory was on the list as well? You know, just going into parts unknown sort of stuff. You know, like traveling all around the country and maybe going abroad.
Yeah, so the Uncharted territory on the list was actually for Beyond Wrestling. They
Oh, I
have a
see.
series called Uncharted Wrestling, but they're based out of Boston or just that Boston area in Massachusetts on the East Coast. And so I've seen a lot of up and coming indie wrestlers make their way through Uncharted territory, and I thought I'd like to go through there myself. But as far as traveling to different places, it's absolutely a goal on the list. Even if it's not explicitly written, it's a
Mhm.
goal personally for me. There are a lot of places that I've been to in such a short amount of time that weren't written down on the list, but still mean as much to the things that were on the list. I've been to Las Vegas, I've been to Phoenix, I've been to Houston, and I think those trips for wrestling have done so much for my career, if not more, than anything on the list that I posted out early in the year.
Mhm. No, good as well. Yeah, there was also a list of opponents on it as well. Is there, if you were only to say, like someone said to you, is like, hey, I know you've got the list of opponents, you can only get one this year. Who would you pick?
If I could only get one from that list, I'm gonna have to go with Nick Wayne. Nick
Mm,
Wayne has been on such a tear ever since that Defy show where he was offered his AEW contract. He has been on such a roll, and honestly, it's very inspiring seeing someone of his age that good. It's almost like I have to play catch up because Nick Wayne is like 4 years younger than me, and he's still in like school. It's incredible to me. I could never have done it at his age, but it's very motivating too because if he can do it, then there's no reason why I can't do it.
mhm.
So I'm definitely upping my game just to get on Nick Wayne's level, and that kid's just really cool. I love him.
Dude's insane. Absolutely, an absolute unit of the business. Um, you know, so a lot of people on the independent scene, you know, want to end up getting permanently signed to a company. Is there a certain company in mind that speaks to you that you want to maybe make your home?
So when I first started training a year ago, I had the intention of going all the way to Japan. And
Mhm,
specifically, I would like to get signed either by New Japan or Pro Wrestling Noah.
mhm,
Those two companies were a big factor of as to why I started wrestling, what I love about wrestling, and as well as my in-ring style. Guys like you mentioned before, like Marufuji from Noah and Tetsuya Naito from New Japan. But recently, as the way things have been going, especially in the wrestling business, I think the destination to go to, especially if you're like in the West, is AEW.
mhm.
AEW has been doing they've been doing such an awesome job at just fueling everyone's love for pro wrestling altogether. Doesn't matter if you're mostly like a luchador fan or like a New Japan fan or just like I guess a casual wrestling
Mm.
fan. Their product is tailored to so many different people, and it's just it'd be an honor to work with them. Quite honestly.
Wow, that's quite high praise there. Speaking of AEW, if you were to, Tony Khan came to you and said, "Hey, you've got dream match, one match. Who are you picking from that roster?"
Just one?
Just one. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here. Just one.
Oh my God. All right. Oh man. My brain my brain says Swerve Strickland because I think we have a very similar style. But my heart says Kenny Omega.
Oh,
Bro, I I love Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega has been such an inspiration to myself, my in-ring style, my everything wrestling related. Kenny Omega's at the top.
oh God. Cosmo Orion versus Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship. Maybe we'll see that in the future someday.
Book it, Tony, please.
Why not? Why not? Eh? Do you feel like AEW's really, since its inception 3 years ago, do you feel like it's really invigorated the whole wrestling scene as well?
Absolutely. I think AEW has done something unlike I've ever seen before. I mean, they brought back CM Punk, dude. I never thought that was possible ever. But
Tear in the eye on that one.
AEW is just proving that they can do the impossible over and over and over again. And I think the biggest factor to all that is that everybody that works for AEW legitimately loves professional wrestling on a different level than I've ever seen anybody else because everybody is driven by passion, everybody is driven by making sure the fans and I guess each other have the best time possible at an AEW show. And it's that kind of love to your craft, that kind of passion that's really going to drive everything forward.
Mhm.
I believe so.
Oh, definitely. Aye. There was always a second company choice in America, WWE. If you were given a shot, would you go for maybe NXT 2.0?
I've thought about it a lot, and in all honesty, it's very tempting, but for personal reasons, I just don't like the way NXT or WWE go about like handling their talent. Like for example,
Mhm.
like the name changes and like the entire having to relocate from my hometown all the way to Orlando, and then the fact that with all these releases, it doesn't seem like it's very secure. For like
Mhm.
all those factors and then some, I personally wouldn't go to NXT. But who
No,
knows? You never say never in wrestling
no, of
business.
course.
If things change and if things seem to get more preferable for me, then I'd consider it for sure.
No, of course, absolutely. I mean, just mentioning there, you're like, there seems like a lot of people who maybe appear once or twice on NXT 2.0, and the next thing you know, they've just been chucked and thrown away. It's kind of a shame
Yeah,
to see as well. Do you feel like that as well?
I absolutely do because when you, from what I've seen, when you get contracted to NXT, you have to relocate all the way to Orlando. And so that's just it's a huge change in life
Mm.
for a job opportunity. And for you to make that enormous change and then not get used, or let's say you get injured early in your run and you have to sit on the shelf and then you get released, and you kind of been put in a sticky situation because now you're kind of in the middle of Orlando all alone and you can't
Mhm.
really, it just makes things a lot harder for you.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
much like a glass cannon situation. It could be
yeah,
great, but explodes up in your face straight away. Well,
right.
there is always a third option. I was saw that you posted about this company on your Instagram as well. GCW. What are your thoughts on those guys?
GCW, true to their name, they really are changing the game. Um, I didn't really think about it because you said you were talking about getting contracts and everything, and
Mm.
GCW notoriously don't do any contracts. And I think that's a smart move on their part, but I would love to work for GCW. As a matter of fact, one of my goals that I'm like actively working for is working at the collective for next year. So next
Oh,
year, WrestleMania weekend in Los Angeles, just like every other WrestleMania weekend, they have a huge collective marathon running from usually it's like Thursday to Sunday, and they have like I think a total of 12 shows within that weekend. And I'm just trying to work at least one. That's my number one goal is to work the collective for GCW.
good to hear you, man. Well, something I want to touch upon is we know Matt Cardona is the collector of belts, the deathmatch king, and he is injured at the moment. Would you be open to having a wrestling match against him for the Pro Wrestling Legacy World Championship?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I am a fighting champion. Doesn't matter who you are, where you are. If you want to shot at the title, you know where to find me. You know where to find us. All you got to do is ask, and you'll get your title shot right away.
Well, Matt
Absolutely.
Cardona, you better heal up quick because it looks like
Yes,
Cosmo
sir.
Orion is giving you a challenge.
Yes, sir.
Well, I know this Friday you do have a title defense coming up against Adrian Colt at Wild and Free. How are you feeling about that?
I am very eager to put my hands on that rat, Aiden Colt. So my last title defense was a double championship match against El Dragon, who was on MLW, and it was winner take all. And Aiden Colt decided to stick his nose into my business and run interference, not once but twice. So there was no clear winner, and just I don't know why he did it. I think he did something. I think he thinks he's so smart because now that he has me up against the ropes, he can start taking advantage of me. That's not going to happen. Absolutely not. He has pissed me off, and I'm going to kick his ass on Friday.
Well, Aiden, you've heard it here first, pal. You better watch out. Cosmo's going to kick your arse right into the stratosphere.
Absolutely. To hell and back.
That is it. Well, thank you, Cosmo, for having you here on the Soul Sessions, but we're coming to the end of our time. You want to give another plug for PWL just for our viewers who may have not heard it earlier?
Of course. So you can find PWL on Instagram at Pro Wrestling Legacy, on Twitter at PW Legacy TX, and you can find our full shows, our shows in full, on YouTube at Pro Wrestling Legacy TX. And then you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at the Cosmo Orion. I have a YouTube channel where I upload full matches, and check out my Pro Wrestling Tee store, prowrestlingtees.com/Cosmo Orion.
Well, folks, you've heard it here. Follow Cosmo's word. He is the champion after all. I've been Soul. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, tune into Wrestling Republic on Instagram, the website for all your wrestling needs. It's been fun. Thanks for tuning in, guys.